Outstanding. Aloha, Satnam, and welcome to Matrix Body Mechanics Live. How are you all? Blessings, aloha, and Satnam. Welcome to Matrix Body Mechanics Live. I'm your host, Micah Sky. It is Monday, June 15th, 2020, the year of clear sight, clear vision, and we are in the midst of the great revealing, apocalypse, which is apocalypse means great revealing, despite what you might have been shown. I raced home to get here to be able to do the broadcast today. I've been training a couple self-practitioners here on the island. So I just came from the world of neuromuscular release therapy and showing human beings how to activate their own nervous system and awaken their health and wellness. And it's a magical experience when you show somebody how to activate their own body and then they get to integrate in between the sequences of work we do, and actually you watch them really feel that they have produced an effect of healing and release within themselves, or their health and their wellness, and the empowerment that comes with the awareness that they did it, to themselves, they did it for themselves. So excuse me, you have to excuse me, I'm just clearing the throat. Been doing breath work this morning and been having a lot of clearing actually from the respiratory from a lung set that I just did. So a lot of times the deeper cleanses with spiritual sciences or breath work, there's a duration of cleanse that comes where the lungs are clearing and cleansing after that. I'm very proactive about cleansing out the system, always have been. If somewhere hurt on my body, I was the one that would be pushing on that area and stimulating it, intuitively feeling like I needed to just keep pressing and waking that area up until it healed. And unfortunately, most of us have been taught to avoid areas that hurt in our bodies and not really understanding what it is to build a relationship of communication with your body. And so I've been deep in exploring and doing, information and knowledge transmission through lecturing in between teaching the sequences for these two self practitioners to really understand the internal dynamic of what was happening as they cleared their bodies, as they healed their bodies. So there's a lot of fresh metaphors that are probably going to come through me today for the broadcast, as they have just been flowing and circulating. And again, they flow through you when you're teaching people. It's really about allowing that information to flow through. It's one of my favorite things about instruction or teaching is very much that. So, wow, a lot has happened since we spoke last. It has been a week, and as I said, many revelations come in a day, let alone, revelation and awakening is a is a quandary in and of itself, because realization and awakening can be instantaneous, but it was years, months, years of your life and your search for awakening and truth that built up to those momentous reveals that come in layers and keep expanding. And so I'm going to go into probably the most foundational one for me, that is a 20-year full circle journey. It is one of the driving forces after I got a radio show 10 years ago that was leading my sacral awareness, my intuition to be compulsed, to be inspired, to have ambition come through me to even share information, was with this awareness of a preparation that we are all supposed to be, and generationally, from even decades, let's say hundreds of years ago, we're supposed to be preparing for a major event or series of events that the idealistic embodiment of our species, if it was unenslaved and wasn't oppressed and really put in a state of abstraction over the centuries preparing for this event, we would be in a very different place to receive this event. So because we've strayed and been warped and misguided so far from the idealistic place that our species was supposed to be in, to face events coming up on the horizon that almost all of the ancient systems and calendars have guided and pointed towards. I began tracking this 20 years ago, and through my radio show, it became a theme that was leading up to some specific dates that me and several researchers were just super prepared. One of my best friends came out to the islands I live on, and we were fully prepared for this. We didn't even know what it was, but something. And so then it didn't happen. And there was some blocks in understanding what we had been studying that wasn't adding up for us. And some major pieces of that were recently revealed with some really powerful technological formatted displays of this overall event and truth, and so many truths to our world and its dynamics that have been missing pieces for me, whether it's with the dynamic of flat earth or inner earth, all these elements, some things weren't adding up. And somebody, this amazing individual, I'm going to put the links in the chat room, created an amazing animation with technology to show this dynamic parallel to the Mayan calendar and some pivotal pieces that we didn't have sight or clear vision for in 2012 that now all are being revealed to some major magic that is coming this year. That is what it is all about. It is what 2020 clear vision is about. And we're going to explore that today. We're going to explore my historical journey of it and the research around it through the last radio show and then the missing pieces. And I support all of you to really, really just dive in deep and just look at the research around it and explore with an open mind, but an awareness to these ancient civilizations that can acknowledge have a very advanced understanding of the solar system. So much so we've mapped a lot of our astronomy off of the way that it's been tracked. And somebody I watched today said that, astrology and astronomy wasn't created by one individual. It was thousands of people over the years analyzing the skies and tracking and contributing to what today is the science and the mapping of our stars and trying to understand this system. And we've had a geocentric model for a very long time, and only 300 years ago, a heliocentric model was introduced to the world by scientists that were publicly documented and even publicly established to be secret society members. So our entire heliocentric model is based off of what a few guys introduced 300 years ago that are established secret society members. So, but the geocentric model has a really clean mathematics. Heliocentric model, for the most part, does the same, but there were still missing pieces for me with the geocentric model and all the studying and guests I had on my radio show and prior to the inner earth and experiences of, and some things were not connecting. And this piece, it's called The Cosmic Red Pill. You can find it on YouTube. We're going to put the links in the chat room. They created an animation that it's not perfect, and they stated in the beginning, but it is, for my study and research, some major pieces to the structural dynamic of the quantum physics or interdimensional physics of how everything works. And some interesting correlations into even some of our cultural practices that are reflective of this in very pivotal periods when we have these events take place. So I'm kind of vaguely jumping ahead, and then we're gonna go back. But as we did on the first show we did, and as we do every time, because we're introducing a concept of how can we get more out of our interactions together and break the transience of communication and start practicing some of the more ancient practices of communication, which would come in exchanges where we contain the energy, we create a field for the energy and the information that we open together and we close together. And so we did that and we explored the 5 sounds that you can make with this mechanism. A, I, E, O, U. Those are the 5 sounds that you can make with this sound mechanism, sounds of resonance. We explored those and we did one of them last week. We did ah, and we tuned in with it. All together was the intention to tune into this frequency and create a field that then we closed at the end of the broadcast. So we're going to actually add a few sounds together. We're going to do aloha, which I also touched base in our first show, that aloha actually means love. And so when we say it in exchange with each other, we're actually clearing the vibration with the frequency of love phonetically before the exchange. And then after our exchange, we say it, and that clears the field for our next exchange with each other and with somebody else. So it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? That's what I like about looking at the science behind spiritual, cultural practices, shamanic practices, because there's a lot of science that correlates. And that's one of my fascinations, is where it all connects. Where it all connects. Where is the geometry? Where is the sacred geometry in it all? Because you can see patterns of truth through reality in this. And you can see these same patterns in decoding the manipulated mainstream narrative as well. You can learn to see these patterns. It becomes like a set of lenses that you can look through. By the way, when I wear these, just to establish it, it is not to distance myself with contact and connecting with you. It is actually, these are a specific form of technology. The company is called Tesla, not the Tesla that you know. That it's based off Tesla technology. They are a form of glasses that protect all artificial light and actually help the eyes regrow and regenerate. So when I'm staring at screens, I'm almost always wearing these, and they make such a difference. So amazing. These have been proven to help your eyes to heal themselves. In fact, one of the reasons your eyes go bad is because they're getting strained all the time and they're getting affected by artificial light all the time, and we get very desensitized to it. So we're going to do aloha as a sound vibration, and we're going to actually we're going to capitalize or we're going to focus on elongating each of the sounds. So aloha. And notice how I'm extenuating my mouth. It probably looks silly to you, but hopefully you're in a place where you're starting to become less self-conscious about what you look like, because you're seeing how irrelevant that is to doing things that activate your soul, your spirit, your authenticity, and your vibration. And hopefully you're getting to a place where the ego can fall away some, to be able to feel comfortable to take yourself outside of a comfort zone into unknown places and practices to enhance your overall quality of life. So we're going to go, ah, you see I'm dropping the jaw and stretching it. Aloha. Okay. We're going to extenuate that. We're going to do that together. All right. So we're going to take a couple breaths first, just to inhale, exhale. And exhale. And again. And exhale. And you're going to inhale to tune in. So it's going to be a deep breath. Good. Let's try one more. Good. And deep breath, deep as you can. Sip a little more through your mouth. Now, while you do this, hopefully you pulled up like you're holding from having to urinate. So you're pulling up from the stomach and the lower abdomen, what we call the mul bandha, or the root point. And you're going to hold, press the tongue to the roof of the mouth, roll your eyes up, focusing here, which activates the pineal gland, and hold and just squeeze chest open. and exhale. Now, normally we transition into what's called Ujjayi breath, which is through the nose, through the throat. So most of us breathe very shallow. And you'll notice that we breathe erratically through the process. I'm overemphasizing, but this is how most of us actually breathe, especially in conversations, stressful situations, when we're nervous, social anxiety. But you do it really quietly, very shallow, very erratic. Watch what happens when I breathe through the nose, through the throat. You can hear it's going deeper, makes like a hissing sound. Now, what's the relevance of this breath? What is the physiology and the science behind it? Well, when you breathe through the nose, first and foremost, your nose has over 20 functions besides inhaling air. So many of you may not have known that. Over 20 functions. One of the coolest ones about the nose is there's a tiny release of nitrous oxide gas when you inhale through your nose that sanitizes your air. Go figure. When you breathe through your mouth, it goes right into the abdominal cavity. Thus, the phrase mouth breather would be somebody who is breathing from a lower center in the abdomen and the lower respiratory and not up here. Okay. So the end result is somebody with a more distended stomach where the stomach is actually doing the primary expansion. And that's because the chest is collapsed, because most of our chests are collapsed because our posture is reflected in our oppression. It's reflective of our oppression, excuse me. What does that mean? It means that we've all been warped in our posture because we're carrying the chemical memory of all of the misinformation, disinformation, manipulation, deception that's come. And then not only to our lifetime, but intergenerationally passed down from our parents. And so we saw their posture and the warping of their posture from being broken and oppressed. And we mirrored that to some degree. Without knowing it, monkey see, monkey do. So the breath is tied to that. So when you breathe through the nose, through the throat, and again, this is a really easy way to figure out how to do it because it's, when I teach this to people, it's uncomfortable first. You have to learn how to open this little valve here. So we do that by try breathing through your mouth first and close halfway. And try the same thing when you go out. Just getting set up on another platform for the show. I didn't realize it wasn't up here. Outstanding. So what that's doing when you pull through the nose, through the throat, is it is actually forcing you to elongate your breath. So I want you to see how much harder it is for me to breathe erratically through my nose. Ooh. It looks like we just got popped off. Looks like we just got popped off of our radio broadcast. Now, I don't know if too many of you are familiar with this, but all right, are we back? Good stuff. Okay. So I don't know if anyone, this is a good segue. There has been a ton of downage for all cellular services today, and calls dropping. Just it's kind of like silence. And I find this very interesting because it's 2 days before we begin to enter into the first of two major events that we're going to be talking about that tie into the Mayan calendar and the galactic alignment. So interesting, the 2 days prior, we're having a electromagnetic influx that's kind of taking down the cellular service, which means it's affecting all of the satellites right now. And we're still 2 days out from the process beginning. Okay. So jumping back as we will, we're on a holographic broadcast, so we can jump in between pieces of information. Coming back to the nose through the throat. When you inhale this way, listen to how hard it is for me to breathe erratically. You can see my neck flexing. It's much harder for me to pull, so I have to pull slower. It's making me pull a more elongated breath. Oops. Let's see. It's making me pull a more elongated breath. Hang on one second, friends. I'm hearing some sound. It's allowing for a more elongated pull, and that elongated pull is going to elongate your breath, which is going to regulate your heart rate and your circulation. So when you breathe through the nose, through the throat, it's forcing you, it's training you, it's guiding you to elongate the breath rather than, or now I'm overemphasizing, but this is how most of us breathe because we haven't been taught to breathe with elongated breath. So this Ujjayi breath that we do in between our breath work or after we do a chant and a deep breath pressurization to pressurize oxygen literally to be somewhat injected into the bloodstream and rush that oxygenated blood to the brain, which is why we do that deep breath we just did after our little tune-in aloha chant. It is to learn to start pressurizing oxygenated blood to the brain, which starts turning it on because you're only using a small percentage of your brain. And just like an engine, if there's not enough fuel to the engine, we pump the gas pedal and flood the engine and try to turn it over and we ignite it. Okay. So this elongation of breath, this Ujjayi breath, is a magical thing, and you should be breathing in it when you're out in your day, because now you're not only elongating your breath and regulating your heart rate, but you are also filtering all the free radicals, the chemicals, bacterial, viral pollens from seasonal pollens that circulate around the planet. You're getting more of a filter here. Whereas if you're breathing here, you're breathing directly into your abdominal cavity. Okay, so just a little info on the breath, and thank you for tuning in. And another thing one of my teachers guided me to, which I find to be really fascinating, especially if I do lectures, is they said if you really want somebody to obtain the information in a conversation with you, you have to psychically envision all the information that you're going to exchange into a ball of energy in front of you, and then take that energy and blast it into people. So you just shoot it into them and then talk about intellectually, consciously talk about the information, but energetically sending it to them is going to actually attest to the etheric non-physical side of the frequency and vibration of the information, and it's going to anchor it in. So I've found that people remember stuff that we talk about more when I do that. So blasting all this information, building it into an energetic ball that I'm going to throw out through this camera, which is going to go through the system and out to you to receive what it is we're going to get into, because we're going to explore quite a bit and there's a lot to this. So I guess we'll bring it all the way back to when I started the radio show. I covered esoteric information. I covered esoteric knowledge, spiritual sciences. Out of all the radio shows I used to have, the show was called Esoteric Action Radio. Because it wasn't just about mentally talking about, it was about learning the actions, the practices, taking action to empower ourselves with it. So of course, along the way, I covered so many different things, which are ironically now, fully in mainstream. Even if they're just being laughed at or disregarded, everyone's being more forced to look at them. Whereas before you had to really search some of these things like underground bases or the child trafficking or adrenochrome or you name it. So it's been very interesting for those of us researching stuff like this for several decades. Here it all is. Here it all is. Still here and more at the forefront and being pushed to the forefront of people's awareness because it cannot be hidden anymore, moving into this time of clear vision. So of course I came across the topic of the Mayan calendar, and I began a deep dive into researching the Mayan calendar, the history of the Mayan calendar, all the dynamics of the Mayan calendar, the timelines, the translation to the Gregorian calendar, and all of it seemed to point to October 28th, 2011, building up towards 2012 being this end of the Mayan calendar as they knew it. But we thought we had like a privy to a predate for potentially cataclysmic earth changes, which was always prophesied to kind of go along with this great awakening. And I had visions of these earth changes probably 4 or 5 years at the time prior that they rattled me to my core and are still with me to this day. And I was with my brother who ended up coming out to the islands with me in preparation for what we didn't know what was going to happen. But again, we went up to the top of a mountaintop, October 28, 2011, and nothing happened. And of course, then December 21, 2012 came along, and there was, again, significant shifts in human consciousness in the collective from 2012, make no mistake. But it wasn't what I had been studying, researching, and was truly depicted through not only the Mayan calendar, but several other correlating indigenous and ancient tribes or ancient civilizations, along with this cyclical timeline that came about, where there would be this alignment of the planets. And that alignment would create an opening to the center of our galaxy and this photonic field, in this, which was a period of time that we are moving through now. It's actually 1,000-year period of time, but that there was a pivotal alignment where it was always talked about that the veil between worlds would be very thin and all of these elements would be revealed. That there would be great earth changes and a transformation of human consciousness and a great awakening. So some major pieces obviously have come into play since then. Now, after that, I just made peace with, I put myself through a journey preparing for this and telling people and alienating a lot of, being alienated from a lot of friends and family who didn't want to hear any of it. And of course, when nothing happened, they just soaked it up and justified the craziness, so to speak, that I was embodying, and they were right, and this and that. Anyways, none of that really was an issue for me. It was more my intuitive guidance to track and follow something that I knew I was supposed to be following, and pieces not fully lining up. And that was more my main challenge with it. So I had just had, I was about a year into my first little one, and it was just a time to focus in. I felt more on self. So I made my peace with it. I left the radio show. I stopped my radio show and left the network and focused on really cultivating a more localized assignment, which was to develop neuromuscular release therapy and really get it to the world and train other practitioners to do it so that it all didn't just rest with me, which was a lot of pressure to carry an entire system, be the only one that does it. So I manifested and explored through that journey and dynamic, all the while kind of tracking my Intel networks of the radio show were always going. And so I was always still paying attention. I just wasn't spending 3 hours every Sunday doing it each week. So recently, an amazing researcher and and his animation team created an animation that really shows you the dynamic of, and it's not perfect, but the best that I've seen to show a quantum structuring of multiple realms or worlds and an understanding of those off of a geocentric, but also a not heliocentric, a geliocentric based model that is still based around all the science, whether it be the Van Allen belt, which is an electromagnetic field that we cannot pass through to get to a certain level outside of our atmosphere. It tied together other pieces that I found over the years, like Operation Fishbowl, where we detonated over 117 billion tons of radioactive plutonium in the atmosphere, trying to detonate this firmament field that we discovered after our documented trip to Antarctica. It's from 1938 to 1963, when they outlawed nuclear testing in the atmosphere. We put 117 billion tons of radioactive plutonium all over the planet, and it wasn't the radiation as much as the dust cloud of particles that spread everywhere with I believe, a 50,000 year half-life. Maybe it's 500,000 year half-life for radioactive plutonium. You should check that out. But the point is, it's here for a while, and it's gotten onto everything: the sand, the flowers, the plants. And if even one particle of this embeds in your lung tissue, you get lung cancer. So very interesting that 1 out of 2 humans smoked tobacco up into the 1940s, and there really wasn't lung cancer. And 1940s on, here comes lung cancer, and here comes the quasi-medical campaign that was making the one thing humans were inhaling at the time responsible for it. Now, I will do a segment at some point on this because this is one of the stories that I personally researched for years, and I found 6 decades of scientific research around this that was attempted to be presented in front of Congress and was stifled. Why was it stifled? Because this is a cover-up for all of the world's governments detonating radioactive plutonium willingly into the atmosphere and really poisoning this entire planet from 1963 on, or 1938 technically, but then, it was outlawed in 1963. And it didn't make sense to me why they detonated all of these nuclear bombs. What, just to blow them up and see what it would do? And eventually I tied together, no, they were trying to actually break or penetrate what we are contained within. So I want you to imagine natural processes, like when a tree grows up out of the earth and it continues to move upward, and it kind of pushes the earth outward. As it thickens and gets bigger, the earth is pushed out almost in concentric rings. So in this model, it mirrors, if anyone's ever seen the Mayan calendar, it's a series of rings withinward. It models not only the Mayan calendar, but a series of other calendars and systems that have been collected along with the geocentric model and factoring the heliocentric model to some degree, or just the aspect of the mathematics of how our sun and moons rotate, et cetera, and all of the stars. And it shows a animation of a series of flat spherical rings that have electromagnetic Van Allen belt fields that go around the entire circumference of them, separating them. Now, I want you to understand a primary element with water is electrons. So imagine these are electron fields that are separating and dividing these realms. And at the center is a polar anchor, so to speak. And from that polar anchor, these realms every 6,000 years expand out with the changing of a series of cycles that's both depicted in the Vedas and also depicted in the Mayan calendar. And so through these cycles in the Vedas, we have a period of yugas, is what they're referred to as. They're broken into increments. And a majority, I'm not going to get too deep into the yugas, except for to say that we are in the Kali Yuga, which is the great transitional, intense period, so to speak. But with the yugas, a majority of the yugas are golden and very advanced and conscious and full of joy and bliss and basically very positive. And they are reflective of the seasons. That if we look at our seasons, the fall and the winter are smaller. Excuse me. The sun and the winter are a smaller fraction, the fall and the winter, of the period where the sun comes out and everything grows, right? So majority of our seasons are based in there being sun and life and light. And then there are smaller periods where there is a dying, death, rebirth process. And everything, like I said, is patterns and it is mirrored. So in it being patterns and in it being mirrored, when you go from the gold age to the iron age is the rough one. That's where you're almost going into a dark period, a period of forgetting, of ignorance, and then it moves from iron and it transitions back from iron to bronze, then silver, and then back into gold again, okay? So I want you to imagine that each of these rings in the Mayan calendar, okay? And we'll just focus on the Mayan calendar instead of the other calendars or the yugas. I want you to imagine that there is, each of these rings is a concentric realm that's come from the origin realms, which the origin realm would be known as Polaris. You got Polaris, you got Hyperborea, then you have Lemuria, Atlantia, and then the Aryan world, which we are in right now. And every 6,000 years, there's an expansion to another realm, and that's the next one. And this is every 6,000 years, which is basically coming to a complete alignment and close December 21st this year, because 2012 marked the beginning of the last 7 days or 7 trumpets each being a year, putting us to 2019, into 20 and 2020 coming to a completion, closes the entire cycle of this 6,000 years and is the apocalypse, so to speak, great revealing at the end transition of this cycle of what's called a cardinal shift. Now, this cardinal shift is where all the realms, every so often, imagine they're all rotating with their own systems, okay? And if you really want to understand this, again, it's so hard to go into it when you could watch this, but I want to plant seeds for you to pay attention to. Every world, whether it's the Polaris, the first realm, which had Polaris and Pluto. So you have Polaris and Pluto being the sun and moon of that realm, okay? Then it went out to Hyperborea, and you have the next planet and star that ended up being their sun and moon. But again, consecutively from these realms, as they go outward, they kind of almost electromagnetically create a Van Allen belt that's down from each other, almost like a layered tier cake. So as they go down, the vantage point of each one of these suns and moons is farther away, and so they appear more distant like stars or planets. But for each realm above, they are actually brighter and fuller and bigger and are their suns and their moons. So every so often, they all line up at one time, and it's every 6,000 years that this takes place. And this period, when this happens, at least in this model and from what I've been shown, there is a giant electromagnetic release and a radiation release. That's not a bad radiation, but it releases an ionic electromagnetic electron charge that causes the Van Allen belts of all realms to become very thin. And this happens December 21st because the sun is descending down to its furthest point. And this is also represented in the Christ resurrection. For 3 days, the sun goes into this vertigo, almost vantage point of the death, and then 7 days of a rebirth as it comes back into it, as it rises from its descending point, its farthest descending point, which on some level, with the alignment and where everything is, would account for what's been prophesized as 7 days of darkness, because for North America, literally you're not going to have that vantage point of the light of the sun to the same degree from this extreme angle. And when all these suns and moons line up in this very distant angulature, okay, it allows the electron fields to thin, and it allows to see between all of the realms. It also allows for the transport and transition between realms potentially. June 21st, which is in 6 days, is the counterpoint to that descension where the sun actually ascends, which we know as summer solstice. So there are two primary events. Now, unlike other summer or winter solstices in this year, because of this cardinal shift in alignment of all of this in one place, happens every 6,000 years, it has been shown in both ancient prophecy and text of some of the more advanced civilizations, including the Mayans, the Sumerians, that this alignment creates what they described as a ability to see through the realms, so to speak, to have truly clear vision, to see a lot more than you could normally see. And it's my deep understanding through my research over 20 years studying those that are working hard to keep this information from you, that they learned all of this because, you see, when this alignment takes place and the veils are thin, you have the potential, if you have spiritually prepared yourself, to have some major upgrades and activations of your consciousness, and potentially could travel. I'm not going to say physically. I believe that that's through the spiritual sciences within, but I believe that those in control think they're going to physically travel to inner realms that are supposedly supposed to go from the time dynamic. If you understand how everything's rotating, these inner ones are farther ahead in the future. So technically you could go 3,000 years into the future if you could be in a place both mentally, emotionally, and spiritually to do so, which you're not going to be in with hundreds of years of oppression and ignorance and deception against what I believe to be spiritual sciences that were placed with humanity as tools for the preparation for this great alignment that happens every 6,000 years, where we have an opportunity to go to higher levels of consciousness, or for this window, and I'll explain the window, to be compromised from going higher and either stay stagnant in this realm, or as an expansion and this outer rotation of the shift, the realm that's now expanding outside of ours is about to enter into the Iron Age, which is an Iron Age is the darker age, a primitive age, which in this model and what's talked about, which correlates with a lot of the data and research I've done, those that control this world jumped rings on the last 6,000 year cycle for our Iron Age, when we went into the ignorance and the darkness and the forgetting. And instead of going forward because they lacked the ability to go higher, they jumped rings back and decided to take control and start meddling in a world that was about to go through, a great darkness. And they came from a future, so to speak, realm of existence into the resetting of this past realm, or the kind of starting point back through the Iron Age, as I said, cycles and seasons, and easily took control in that regard. And thus 6,000 years later, we're coming up on an alignment, and there's all this talk of Mars in another realm, or Mars and establishing a colony in another place. And in this specific animation, they talk about that they believe, and you can see a lot around the preparation, focus, and obsession with getting to Mars, that they're looking to try to go through the veil and jump once again to the dark age of this cyclical realm that's about to transition into it. And on some level, they want to keep as many of us from being prepared, aware, even consciously aware of what's happening as possible. Now, it's also been said that this will also be probably their last attempt false flag, because imagine December 21st, when this alignment happens with electrons and electromagnetic radiation release, creates this EMP, let's say, and green fluctuating light that goes all over. And it's actually going to look, from what has been explained and what I've seen, a rainbow colored iridescence everywhere. They're going to say, whatever, aliens, or, oh, it's a radiation thing. Don't go outside. Don't be in this energy. And it is many people that I work with's belief that if your body isn't prepared, you have a lot of heavy metals, you have the garbage from the vaccines in your system, that it very much could potentially be really harsh for you to go outside. But if your body's prepared, if it's cleansed, if your nervous system, if your system is cleansed, that this is going to be, you want to be out in this energy getting this upgrade. So let's look at the window. Starts December 21st, first 3 days to the 24th, which is very interesting that the sun does this process that we've marked to the Christ resurrection, death and resurrection period. And then the 7 days of the resurrection, the first 3 days of this kind of lingo vertigo. And from the 24th to the 31st, apparently, the window and the veils with the Van Allen belts, the electromagnetic fields, is going to be thin. And as of the 31st into January 1st, it completely closes. And then this whole clock system starts its next cycle for the next 6,000 years. So there is a pivotal window from the 21st, but really, especially as it's fully open, the 24th to the 27th, for you to be tapping into this energy, even just being aware of it. But I've been shown that doing any spiritual sciences, any deeper divinely origin activation practices, spiritual ancient systems, where it's about activating the battery of your cells, and stimulating the mitochondria and the telomere activation, that's going to be enhanced during this period of time. And that whatever you put into this, you will get out of it. But either way, that there will be an overall shift in the perception of our reality. But for that period, when the veils are thin, you can apparently see up and see through the realms to wandering systems and stars. And it's going to be extremely beautiful. It's what I've always been shown. And I had some very deep remembrances, and I'm not even gonna say downloads, because it's unfortunately language and terminologies, especially in New Age or spiritual culture, have been under attack, so people disregard them. So we'll say uploads through the process of witnessing this. And again, I am prefacing this video. Please watch it yourself just to bear witness to it. Again, all the mathematics on it aren't completely right, or the size for the animation isn't completely accurate, but it's the actual principle and the visual dynamic of how to show you quantum physics through the concept of time and space and the development of our world and its realms. Now, imagine, I'm not saying flat Earth, imagine a spherical series of these circles within electromagnetic fields. So technically, although these worlds wouldn't be inside of the Earth, they are an inner Earth of these spherical worlds, so to speak, all encased in Van Allen belts that go around them that bend and push off of each other. So as above, so below. The water's above, the water's below. Electrons are the primary foundational element of water. So imagine just a sea of electrons that are dividing these, that then get thin to be able to see between them. June 21st is the counter pole event to December 21st in a matter of days. What does it mean? I'm not really sure, but I can tell you that if the event I've studied for 20 years and the full ramification of what it means for the system, it's not about a magical event taking place or some kind of theatrical. I mean, it is theatrical. It's beyond any movie I could ever write as a screenwriter or anything. But my point is, if this level of an event takes place from the system coming to a full resetting or a completion, then there has to be a counter polarity event on June 21st to some degree of a similar relevance or magnitude. If everything is polarized and based in duality in this realm, then there has to be some degree of that that's going to be coming up in a matter of days. So use it for inspiration. Use it for motivation to meditate more. And really, what's the worst that could happen? Nothing happens and you meditated more and started a detox and started to get yourself more healthy mentally, spiritually, and physically. So it's a win-win either way. And not having any attachment to it is going to be the most enjoyable for you to be the witness. You're not playing a role in the theater, in the production, where you're involved in your role. You're the script supervisor. You're aware of the story, but you are not attached to it because you know it is something that is playing out. And just like your life, it has a entrance point and a transition point. Now, if we start looking at photonic dynamics of light photons, and you understand that all matter, a lot of people don't know this, all matter is light photons. You know, have you ever seen a light? So here's an illuminating light photon that's glowing. If you were to slow that photonic cycle down of an individual light photon and slow it down, it would have a beginning and an end. And that beginning and end, when you slow light down enough, that light particle becomes electromagnetic and it draws particle matter, atomic matter, to it, to attach to it. So all matter, all this stuff is light that's been slowed down so much that it has become polarized and it has drawn matter, physical matter, to manifest in the slowed down light. So all of us are just slowed down light, which means if we are light that has become materialized through this slowing down of light itself, that means that if there's a physical realm that's manifested from light in a photonic light cycle, that at some point that photonic manifestation is going to, that exists in the photonic cycle that is slowed down, but it's still going to have a beginning and an end. That means at some point that photonic cycle comes to a close, and the matter that existed in the photonic cycle will turn back into light. That's basic physics of light, photons, a light photon. Please learn about it more. I did, and I found it to be fascinating and opened some profound understandings. In fact, here's a really cool one, just to show you how little you've learned about why things are that way. And this is on the scale of a little kid asking you, "Daddy, why is the sky blue? Do you know why the sky is blue? Does anyone know why the sky is blue? Why is the sky blue?" That's a basic question. I feel like we all ask probably our parents. I don't think they answered it the way that I've answered it for my kids. The sky is blue because out of all of the light frequencies, the hues or in the color spectrum of light as it hits this atmospheric firmament dome and it fractals, blue is the longest waveform and travels the fastest. So as the light fractals off the firmament, it travels the fastest and covers this firmament and reflects that light photon color, blue, which is why as the sun sets, the blue goes because of the angulature. And for the first time, other colors that are not as fast as blue. And by the way, here's something interesting. Guess what the second longest waveform color is? Green. Thus why most of the foliage that your eye sees and interprets the waveform is from the next color, which is green. So we have a very green and blue earth from the first two photonic waveforms that have the longest length, that travel the fastest, which is why they hit the matter, the slowed down light that's materialized, and reflect back to you the frequency color that your eyes interpret of blue and green. There's some green out the window right there. So there is something magical that now you know that makes perfect sense. That's why it's blue, is because that blue wave frequency is what travels the fastest, and that's why it reflects everywhere, etc., etc. Learning is fun. Knowledge is fun. Knowledge is empowering. Let's see. I am, real quick, friends, trying to sign into our radio network because I wanna put those links in for you. But I'm glad I'm not right now because I feel like many of you would just go out and watch it, and I want to talk a little bit more about it and kind of prep you to get more from it. Sharing all, because this was very impactful for me, and part of the reasons it was so impactful was because I had done all the study and research for it to actually mean more. And sorry about that, friends. Let's see if it lets me in now. There we go. There we go. Okay. So when we talk about light and the transference or the existence of what matters. See, we've gotten so conditioned to the material world and what matters. We take it so seriously. I think that's one of the most powerful things about the spiritual sciences is that when you meditate or you do even one or two kriyas of breath work, there's this profound euphoria and oneness that comes over you where you really feel outside of your physical self and you get to exist in that space. And existing in that space, existing in that space helps you to not take this and all this so seriously. And it's a subtle process that you notice if you have discipline and you do these practices, is because it's an overall unattachment that forms over time. Like, yes, you'll be the deepest in it in your meditation and after your breath work, but it's the transitional periods between doing your practices that it starts seeping into, where you start to become more of a witness and more transpersonal instead of interpersonal. Doesn't mean you're not there, doesn't mean you're not involved or caring or present, just like being more objective as opposed to subjective, which is hard to do. It's hard to find a transpersonal awareness in interpersonal relationships. That's one of your greatest challenges. It's one of all of our greatest challenges, is specifically that. So these systems, these sciences, let's go into an imagination hypothesis. Instead of trying to analyze if what I'm telling you is true or false, or okay. Now, I've already told you that there is a profound amount of astronomical, of historic, of archaeological, but specifically astronomical data showing you all of this. The alignment that's coming December 21st of this year, the June 21st, the counter period for that alignment. So there's going to be, if there's an electromagnetic release and this magical process that happens December 21st, imagine there's a counter process on the polar opposite of that, which is in a matter of days. That's why I felt it was so relevant to actually talk about it today, because this is giving you, 6 days technically to reflect, to become more consciously aware, to exist in the third variance of what Leonardo da Vinci talks about, which is that there are people that see, there are people that see when they are shown, and there are people that do not see. Being somebody who sees, or being somebody who sees once you are shown. Well, if this is going to be this magical astronomical event that only happens every 6,000 years, I guarantee you, being somebody who sees, you're going to be able to experience more of the divine intention for what all of us were supposed to be aware of and experiencing. Now, isn't it interesting that this alignment is in a period of time, the 21st to the 24th, where we are bombarded with being so busy and so distracted? So that's my challenge to you. Bear witness to the attempts at distraction and make this approach of Christ consciousness rising, which we already honor if you honor Christmas at all. By the way, I want you to think of this. If this animation, it represents like a tree of life, and a tree at the central realm known as, I believe, Polaria. And then you have Hyperborea, and then you have Lemuria, Atlantia, and then Arian, which is this realm now. And then there will be another one. And this is how they kind of ripple out from the first world that created. And it creates, as I said, this expansion creates another realm with another Van Allen bent electromagnetic field that goes around it that separates them. Isn't it interesting that for Christmas, we put a tree in our homes with spiral lights that center up its layers that we light up to honor this period of Christ and the resurrection. Isn't it interesting that, and you'll see it especially when you watch the breakdown structurally of the hypothesis of what our world and worlds and structure of this universe is structured around. Very interesting that we do this. I hope that you see the parallels as I do. I trust you will. We tend to be given dumbed down versions of the truth with things. In fact, one of the greatest ways, the two great forms of deception are to change the truth a tiny bit. So there's still some resonance with the individual of truth because it's a version of the truth. But even the slightest alteration is actually not really the truth still. And then the other one is to just do the complete opposite. So tell the opposite in terms of, deception. It is, you're not deceiving that, oh, it's not brown, it's not this brown colored sofa. It was a completely white sofa. Oh, I wanted this gray, charcoal gray sofa. They sold it to someone else. It was like a brown color. Oh no, it was a bright white. It wasn't even close to the color spectrum you would have wanted. So this is a horrible example I'm giving, but the point is you either change the truth a little bit or you do the complete opposite so that no one suspects that the truth is so far from the lie that they have accepted. And once that lie is accepted and it is like an infection or a virus, or an idea, once it gets in and you form emotions around it, which is all a belief is, by the way. A belief is an idea that you have formed emotional attachment or emotional intellectual identification with. And once that happens, you're hooked, because now to question it threatens your entire reality that you've been collecting different pieces that you have mostly been told by your parents, mostly been told by your teachers, or an infrastructure and a system that a lot of these false truths have been implemented in. Like I said, there was a geocentric model that we were going from for thousands of years. In fact, most of the ancient advanced calendars are off of a geocentric model, and only when a few known secret society scientists introduced a heliocentric model, which is, by the way, based around the sun, which their secret society happens to be all about worshiping, did we change everything to a heliocentric model. And the concept of a geocentric model became, oh my God, this person, it's just crazy. I mean, again, I could give you another reference that you're probably going to be challenged with. How about the fact that your body produces a medicine that has all the antibodies for anything that's wrong with you? A virus, cancer, you name it, your body detects it, produces antibodies for you, and then you don't take those antibodies, and then you never heal thyself. But your body and its technology was so brilliant that you were designed to produce a medicine that could fix you up anything. And I don't speak on this in hypothesis. I am here and alive today from this science. I am here and alive today from this truth. It saved my life. It saved my friend's life. It's helped a lot of people. It's helped my children to not be sick, my partner. I have removed scars from my body and got rid of MRSA staph when antibiotics would not do it. And I was sick for 8 months with MRSA staph with holes in my body and nothing would work. And it was to the place where it was systemic and I was pretty scared. Ironically, my friend who saved his life, same thing, staph, saved his life from staph. Now, if I were to tell you what this medicine is that you make, you're probably going to be grossed out and offended. Why? Because you've been taught so far from a truth that this just seems absurd. But if you study the science behind it, I don't know how you can deny it as a truth, cognitive dissonance or not. all of the nutrients from your food are also bioavailable. All the nutrients that you couldn't absorb yourself are bioavailable, go right into the bloodstream. Tons of nutrients, like a vitamin B shot. Now, your body produces this medicine for you. It is yours and for you. It can be used topically. It can be used orally. You can gargle with your throat. If you get a sore throat, I gargle within 10, 15 minutes and sore throat's gone. The practice is called uropathy. You produce your own medicine through your urine. Only the first couple seconds and the last couple seconds are actually waste. The rest is a powerful medicine that was designed for you to heal yourself, that's free, that you make every day. No vaccines, no antibiotics, no need ultimately for them and their trillion-dollar industry. Kind of makes sense why they don't want you to know about it. It's what it is. I could show you case file after case file. Someone on their deathbed with cancer started uropathy, completely regenerated and healed themselves. I've used it on my skin, hair, and face forever. After it saved my life, oh, by the way, just so you know, I speak from a place of all this was gross. It was absurd. When my friend healed himself with this, I was like, no way. But I tried it just because I was so impressed with how he didn't die and was healthy again. So I tried it. I had so much energy. It was like someone just injected a vitamin B shot. And I was just like, what is this? So then when I got sick later, because I kind of dabbled, it was kind of cool. I spoke about it, but I didn't really become self-realized and live the practice and break through the psychopathy. And the psychopathy we're going to track to a root, okay? And the ultimate root is you're gross. You are a stinky, gross, disgusting vessel. You are not a divine reflection of God that is completely sovereign to activate and heal yourself. You're stinky, gross thing. You're gross, your smells are gross, your fluids are gross, everything about you is gross. In the ancient times, this was known as divine and sacred. Everything is sacred. In spiritual practices, in ancient spiritual texts, your saliva, your blood, your sexual fluid, it all is sacred. It has your energy signature. And if somebody gets a hold of it, they can mess with you energetically. They have the signature with your information in it. Now it's coming out more and more how sacred blood is, isn't it? Because you're starting to see the using and manipulation of this from these darker realms. This has been going on for so long, but it's all for the blood, for this precious thing that they have twisted and capitalized off of for a false sense of youth, euphoria, and empowerment. It's like any cheat thing. You know what I mean? It's like any cheat thing. It's like going to give you a brief attempt at what the actual legitimate aligned with source process to have youthfulness, feeling empowered, feeling psychically activated. There are spiritual practices that take a little more effort, but they don't they're truly rooted in what you want, not the superficial, hollow, empty attempt at something the cheater's way. Okay. It would be like the euphoria you get from doing an hour yoga set as opposed to drinking a couple beers or smoking some cannabis. In fact, if you want to smoke cannabis, you should be willing to do at least 30 minutes of breath work after to flush the dopamine from your brain. If you're not willing to do the breath work to clear that out, you really shouldn't be willing to do the medicine. These are challenges and constructs I was given by my spiritual teachers. Oh, cool. Okay. Want to smoke some cannabis? We'll do some smoke cannabis, do some Kundalini, do some yoga. But you need to be willing to do practices that account for the impact of what you just did, or you shouldn't be willing to do that. I like that. It was a challenge for me at the time. Okay, cool. All right. You know what? Then that should naturally regulate anytime I would use a medicine because it's a lot of work to do practices and to activate and clear my field. separate from when I'm doing them all, daily. It's like, okay, wait, to do an extra 30 minutes of breath work on top of the set I did today. Okay, whoa, all right. Do I really want to be willing to be accountable for my actions in that way? So you're divine. Every aspect of you is divine. Your essence, your smell as a human being is divine. You've been alienated from it because you've been bombarded with fragrances and soaps. And so you've built an attachment to things smelling a certain way that's not realistic and gotten alienated to your own human scent. I'm not saying everyone, I love so many brothers and sisters are embracing what it is to smell like a human being, embracing their scent. Now, if you're toxic, yeah, you're probably not going to smell so great. So it justifies, oh, I'm gross. Well, no, you're not gross. Your diet, your lifestyle is gross. How you are existing is gross. You are not gross. You are divine, and you can live to the embodiment of that divinity, or you can live to be, a manifestation of all of the things that have been put in this world to challenge you from discovering that divinity. And we created them all because consciousness creates everything in this dynamic, just like we created all of these things that are happening right now and whatever continues to happen from here. But being more consciously aware is very different than being unconscious and becoming a bystander or byproduct of that unconscious sleep state, ignorance to what's going on. So I want you to at least be somewhat aware of what these dates mean outside of your world, outside of the planetary plots at work, outside of the pandemic, outside of to me, totally manufactured instigation of division between our people, whether it's through sexuality or race, color, creed. This is an old formula of breaking union between people because those that control everything are outnumbered by the people. So to divide us naturally is a strategy that I believe you or anyone else would do if you were them. There was a Illuminati charter I read from the 1900s, so over 100 years ago, that I read on my old show. And of course, our network was just all of a sudden bombarded. They started trying to shut our network down. And the way they would do that is they would send all of these hits to our producer, our network, and it would seem like 300 people just jumped on it at one time. So it would overwhelm the system and it would crash it. And my producers would write me and be like, dude, what are you talking about right now? Because we are getting hammered. Because we learned to decipher over the shows when we would be talking about something really relevant, and all of a sudden the network would just get slammed. Like all of a sudden, all these people went on, which would never happen to that extreme of a spike. And it would, again, overwhelm our computers where we'd be our broadcasting platforms, and then everything was shut down. We'd have to reset it. We'd lose time for the broadcast and the schedule because it was a very tight schedule. So, it was a very successful strategy to do, make no mistake. But I remember I was reading this and they shut our network down probably like 3 times as I tried to get through this thing. And I watched somebody set this to a really cool video that, it's very, wow, so impactful. But the bottom line is this was broken down like over 100 years ago specifically. And it categorizes everything they've done up to present day. Next, we'll direct the focus to the children with bright, sugary things. We'll have it promoted by idols that then will buy those products. And then, of course, they'll eat all these sugars and it'll eat away their teeth. And then we'll put metal fillings in, which will then the heavy metals will affect their brains and their focus. And of course, fluoride, and we'll dump fluoride in the water. They say this in it. And of course, the fluoride allows for dominance and shrinks the rear portion of the brain, blah, blah. It just lists it off. So none of this stuff is new. And you can go look it up just do it to say, you're so crazy. I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to look all this. I'm going to disprove it all. Just do it for that reason. But start looking into it. Start paying attention, start looking deeper than, and this is, and I'm going to bring this up. I'm not calling my old man out, but I'm making an example of several educated individuals, not just Americans, that have grown up, that have aged with mainstream media, and they still don't understand that all the networks are controlled by a select group of people that are in the same secret societies with the agenda to control and manipulate. So they'll say something like this: I watch both sides of the news. So they actually have in their head categorized that, oh no, see, this is why I know that I'm seeing all sides. As they say, I watch the news channel that's more pro left, and I watch the news channel that's more pro right. So I see both perspectives. And I was thinking about this. I'm like, okay, what? So Fox is supposed to represent the right? Interesting. Since Fox is owned by these same individuals, why wouldn't you just hire some extremely offensive and outlandish representatives from the right that then represent that in your news channel and then embody what people think all the people that are right or from the Republican Party must represent or be like? And same with the left. And that they've actually, through these personalities, gotten you to interpret all humans this way specifically. Just like most people don't know that there wasn't ever just an origin Democratic and Republican Party. It actually was all just a Democratic Party. That's all that existed until Abe Lincoln created the Republican Party, so to speak, after there was a whole establishment of rights from the Civil War. And then most of that got redacted after he was assassinated anyways, or at war. But that's how there was over 1,800 Black senators and statesmen that started or were a part of the founding Republican Party. The reason they could even do that was because it was established post. So it was never an origin of two. It actually was established to create more rights, ironically, for the African American people. And so the mentality of your average older American is that, yeah, even my dad said, isn't it crazy how it's just flipped 180 degrees? And now the Republicans just they don't care about anything except making money and this and that. They don't care about the people, this and that. And the Democrats are for the people and protecting African Americans, this and that, and that is literally the sold narrative. Because I said to my dad, but Dad, didn't the Democratic Party create the KKK? And even, I believe it was 1876, specifically one of the congressmen even spoke in front of Congress and said, nope, this is our thing. We created it. It's ours. We own it. And he said, yeah, but that's because there was no Republican Party. That was the only, political party there was. So of course they did. And I'm like, yeah, but okay. But then the Republican Party was started, which obviously didn't want anything to do with that because it was based in this. So at what point would the Democratic Party allow or just toss off or, I don't know, trade or transition over the KKK that they created to the Republican Party? That doesn't make sense. I don't even know how that would benefit anybody. It doesn't make sense that they would do it on a political level, on any level. Actually, it's like an extra group that they were using to manipulate votes and manipulate the narrative and bully and bombard people and also manipulate perspective. Why would they ever hand that over to an opposing party that runs against them at any point in history? Doesn't really make sense to me. It would be much easier to just operate it still and then make it identified with the other party, and then you have more control of it. But that's truly what is believed, is that somehow, even though the Democratic Party created it, it became run and taken over by the Republican Party through history somehow, and now is all totally for and represented by the Republican Party or connected to through the idea of this white supremacist Aryan mentality. Getting some red flags on this. And I have no attachment. I just want to have understanding. So I'm not identified with it, just like I'm not identified with any party. I'm not identified as, I never have been. And to keep it totally real, never voted. Never, ever. Did too much research, just saw that somebody was chosen and it never really did anything. Yeah, until now, kind of, because I see not identifying and actually being somebody who doesn't even really has been deeply offended by Donald Trump through the first portion, primarily because I also deeply took in the mainstream narrative and was still siding and I kind of feeling the Democratic Party or Bernie Sanders or so, never Hillary Clinton, but just Bernie Sanders or even Obama, dude. I was like, oh, I had this resonance on some level and I felt I got sold on the image and the illusion of. But if I look back through the track record and the historical breakdown of their presidency, of Obama's presidency, that doesn't, none of that feels good. So, as someone who's been offended by and not liked Donald Trump, obviously his ego, all the elements, he represents an old paradigm masculine for me that is just what it is. And I'm not even mad at it. I just see that old paradigm dynamic, and I would ideally want to see a more conscious embodiment of the masculine in different ways that I think are relevant. Okay, maybe but I can look through my egoic process with this person's ego and look at the established elements of action, breakdown of action through, and again, I'm just looking at the statistic breakdown of action, of legislation, of bills and orders signed. And I'm seeing a lot of things that are not only benefiting, are vital to us still having any shred of freedom, because I've been studying this other group for 20 years. So I don't know if you believe in Q or not. I don't know if I believe in Q, but I know these other beings are really legit. I've studied them for 20 years. I know everything they're planning to do is very much legitimate. So that's just what it is in that regard. So I've been paying attention to this underground movement and revolution, and through, my intel networks, like I said, having a show for 3 years, 3 hours every Sunday, opened me up to some, and having some cool, high ranking, military people, scientific people on my show and things, has built some beautiful networks that have allowed me access that's not just on Facebook. Okay. But ironically, a lot of the stuff I see popping up on Facebook that they're telling me first. So, or Instagram, or, platforms. So all this intel is really showing me through action. I'll hear about the next thing that's about to happen, and then I'll watch it be put into place. I'm not attached to it. I don't think it's the ironclad, but I am paying attention. And I'm paying attention to a lot of components that it's not really about having a bias. It's about just looking at the facts straight up that are established here and looking at the chain of evidence and facts that since, September 11th, there's been a lot more surveillance in this world. And that surveillance hasn't just been on us, it's also been on them without them fully getting that, maybe. And it looks like that surveillance has come to a place where it has backfired and to expose a lot of things that, I believe are going to be very challenging for people to process, primarily because we're so identified to this thing and the story and the movie, and your heroes are the people that you think are super great or inspiring. And it's going to be revealed that those people aren't the people that you thought they were. In fact, this whole world is not the way that you were. This is all part of the great feeling. I don't see it as very horrible. I could see it as, if you're deeply identified, it could be horribly scary and apocalyptic, and in the sense of it being a scary thing. But I don't see it that way. I see it as liberating and empowering and exciting. And as long as you don't attach to the elements around it and just surrender to the divinity of how it goes down and what happens, I think that your entire journey of this great revealing will be based on your perception. And the spiritual practices and the breath work and the meditation are designed to add more grace to add more grace to the process, to add more grace and flow to the aspect of revolution within yourself spiritually, mentally, and the process of this great revealing. Apparently, somehow, give me 1 second. Looks like my mic just switched over. Let's see what is going on here. Just give me 1 moment to check this. Okay, mic check 1, 2. Okay, we're still good there. Okay, great. Yeah, I've had some challenges with my sound card. And I have new equipment coming inspired for this show and just to get a clear broadcast for you. But living in Hawaii, that equipment, yeah, it's just a matter of when that equipment comes. So, okay, cool. My producer's telling me my mic is good, outstanding. Let us continue on. Little technical difficulties. So we're into the second hour. We actually only have about 20 minutes left, but I knew this would kind of be the extent of what I wanted to share. And again, 20 years coming full circle with some of these pieces that have come in that really synthesize what was so intuitively and deeply resonant and was just a fire pushing me to be prepared for this great shift and transitional event that I had visions of. And again, I'm not putting everything in it, really not attached in that regard. What I am, though, is aware of this cosmic machine, this cosmic clock that I'm in. And I feel grounded to know the placement of the pieces as they're moving and a larger trajectory of when the clock strikes 12, so to speak. And again, that comes December 21st, 2020 to January 1st, 2021, technically. That's the full window, right? I'm excited. I'm inspired, and that feels great, actually. In fact, imagine if we were an advanced, awake, aware civilization that knew all this knowledge 200 or 300 years ago, or even 50 years ago. How about even 50 years ago? Imagine that this great awareness and knowledge of this giant interdimensional shift and the construct of reality and how the worlds were, and that there was a veil between, and all these elements that these secret societies discovered a long time ago, and then created a false narrative and reality to tell all the people. And I want you to think about something. Let's just say generically, let's say that we live in a geocentric model where everything is rotating around that as a center point. Okay. And let's say that you're in that geocentric model, right? So to be a self-aware, have an awareness to that would give you certain level of conscious awareness. And imagine now that you were in that geocentric existence, but you were taught a heliocentric existence where you were not having everything rotating around you at a center point of a realm, okay? And that you are now rotating around a central point. Think about how much that would throw off your consciousness and psyche. To be existing in a place where the entire dynamic of movement and existence from a more macro reality that was introduced to you was almost completely, literally the opposite of what you were actually walking around and existing in. That's going to disrupt on some level how you experience reality, your authenticity, even if you don't know what you're feeling that's off, that is going to completely disrupt and distort it. And this is a really good example of how we as a people have gotten so disillusioned. Is we've been existing in false reality that's been offered to us by those who actually know how things really are orchestrated and are holding the power over us by controlling what is real. Okay, powerful animals are kept in cages because they are raised with a reality. There's nothing outside of that cage of reality. It's one of the ways that you keep them from wanting to get out of it. And everything I'm sharing with you is not some new age spiritual concept. I'm speaking about ancient through advanced civilizations. Like I said before, some of them we've been orchestrating our astronomy charts off of their accuracy. This is a conglomerate of these different advanced, more conscious and connected people, civilizations, tribes. There is a prophecy of the rainbow serpent, which technically, with the iridescence level that comes from a heightened electron release and electromagnetic flux from energy being released from a system cosmically coming into alignment with all of its electromagnetic vessels aligned, it's going to create a rainbow iridescence. Makes sense. You're going to have the spectrum of light reflecting off this heightened level of electrons. Just imagine if you're more in sync to those heightened energies, how much that could benefit or awaken or activate you. And imagine, oh wait, you don't have to. Imagine you were raised in a society that didn't teach you that the physical vessel that was supposed to be getting prepared for this photonic activation was going to accumulate chemical memory and suffering. And that chemical memory would become rancid and heavy and weight down the physical vessel of your being, and not only affect your psychological development, your spiritual development and growth, your physical vessel from being less painful as you go through life. You fill up and become inflamed and in pain, and all of the stress and trauma accumulate in the tissue over your life, and that chemically weights you down and consciously weights you down. And you are in far left field from the divine place that you are supposed to be, that we are supposed to be as a people, for a major cosmic event that you happen to be alive for, that your lifetime is in the lifetime of this great event. So imagine if you can wake yourself in the biochemical, neurological, psychophysical, fear-based slumber that those that have controlled everything have bombarded you with, knowing that you are biochemical, knowing that you hold chemical memory, knowing that all the neuropeptides from all your feelings collect in your tissue and they actually weight you down over time, whether you're aware of it or not. And like these glasses, the tint gets darker and it alters your vision of reality. So if I go like this, everything looks different than if I do this. But if this started like this and just there was a subtle tint that started collecting darker and darker, I would be desensitized to it. And just the same, chemically, the memory of all of your stress and trauma has accumulated and chemically has compressed and weighted you down. And the collection of toxicity and the bombardment and destruction of your microbiome from industrialized processed foods with no enzymes, and the overaccumulation of metals and toxins from vaccines or fluoridation in your water, or alcohol accumulation and toxification in your system, or neurological epigenetic damages from false external stimulants to make you feel high, has damaged your epigenetic circuitry. And we're all about to go through a transformational event, a quantum and energetical photonic event, where this heightened photonic energy is supposed to be passing through you energetically And if you were clean as a vessel, it would pass right through, but you're full of these chemical memories and traumas and toxins that vibrationally have a lower charge. And you're getting flushed with higher charges of frequency, and you're holding on to low frequency physical toxicity that has a lower frequency vibrational resonance, and you're getting a detox. That's going to be rough detox. Now, if you're cleaner and you're more prepared, it could be extremely orgasmic and activating and energetic. But if you are chemically heavy and emotionally and spiritually disconnected, and all being byproducts of a world where that was put methodically in place, almost like they knew they had to do something to try to weight down and compromise the people that have a divine seedling potential to be fully activated and transcend in this event that they themselves cannot, because of the choices that they've made. Interestingly enough, it even says in the Illuminati Charter that you can't ascend higher if you have physically taken the life of other of the innocent, of living things. If you have specifically of your own organism life, the most. If you have taken the life of another conscious vessel in the physical human form, it compromises your ability to ascend higher, which of course they very much have done for centuries. So they are just stuck in it. And so instead of ascending higher, their strategy, and you'll see it in this video again, just throwing it out there for you to tune into and see and look at our history. And again, look back to spirit science. They always talked about the Martians came down uninvited and brought us into the Luciferian experiment. Okay, cool. Well, Luciferian experiment, as it said, is that consciousness can do whatever it wants. And if it wants to disconnect itself from being connected to the whole and have its own experience and find its way back, what an amazing, enriching educational simulation experience. Consciousness can do that. But every time it's gotten too disconnected and ended up destroying itself or its realm, so to speak, and that these guys jumped ship into this outer, as they put it, came here. So they came, but what if they went through the veil as it thinned 6,000 years ago, jumped into that realm going into its dark age, which was us, and had an advantage and just jumped in and took control for the most part, and have been riding that wave ever since, only till that one gets to a point where there's an opportunity to go higher, and then they try to jump it, hop over to the next one. Realm jumpers. Studying all of the history of where the entrance of a lot of these root lineages of the occult and the secret societies jumped in and started enslaving and meddling, I'm seeing a track to it. I'm seeing a track from the Atlantean, Lemurian to Atlantean timeline, Atlantean to this timeline. I'm seeing the jump ship. I'm seeing the pattern. I'm seeing the strategy. And I'm seeing it now pointed out in this animation with some theology behind it. But at the same time, I'm tracking that and how it's correlating to the factual historical research that I've done, and the study of both the Sumerian civilizations depicting a lot of the Atlantean or Lemurian roots, as well as it's a few other cultures that actually depict this and speak of them. So it's the conglomerate of that I'm applying to this. It's not just I'm looking at this and like, oh, look at this trippy concept. This is fielding and correlating a lot of things for me in the research that I've done, because unlike many who are just interested now in diving into this, which I'm so happy for you to start expanding your reality, for those of us that have been studying this, researching this, spending our time and our energy and our blood, sweat, and tears in trying to understand this, and being ridiculed by our friends and family just because we're triggering something. And of course, obviously, think about 20 years ago, so far out from any timeline of relevance. People are just like, dude, what are you doing? This is all collectively coming into my consciousness filter to look at these things and try to point them out and share perspective with you. So final action aspect of what can we do to activate and empower ourselves. I'm going to show you 4 stretches. right now. And those 4 stretches are to open your wrists, forearms, okay, even shoulder, because we're on these things working technology, exploring knowledge through technology, but we get electromagnetic radiation in our cells, especially these, because we're using and holding these things all the time, just getting them blasted, okay? And then also the general accumulation of wear and tear and tension and contraction in the tissue, in the ligaments, etc. So these are base stretches that we do in Aikido. A few other martial arts, very similar, but these specifically are the formats from Aikido. I'm gonna actually stand up to show you them. I think you should still be able to hear me okay. But these 4 are awesome. You should do them every day, especially if you're doing anything physical or you're going on the computer. It's nice to do them before or after or both. Okay. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna stand up. All right. Okay. So the first one we're going to do, we're actually going to, and all of these are representative to condition us for different wrist grabs in feeling body mechanics. Okay. So the first one we're going to take and we're going to put our fingers here on the palm. Okay. You can see how hand on hand, got 2 fingers there. And I'm going to just drop down my center line. Okay. So I'm going to do a 3 count for each one where I stretch into this. And you notice how I'm cutting right down my center line. Okay. I'm stretching this wrist right now. And so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, release out. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Okay. Do the other side. Again, you can see from this side. Fingers are coming over. I'm kind of grabbing this palm. And this is actually a wrist grab that we would do where you can grab the wrist, or if someone grabs you and you can turn and actually bend, and this just caves somebody down. So we strengthen these to actually make it stronger for ourselves to be conditioned for wrist grabs so we don't get injured, etc. So we're going to come down on this one, cutting our center line, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Good. And you're going to shake it out. Next one we're going to be doing, we're going to take the middle finger and the thumb and we're going to connect them under here. And you're going to, I actually squeeze a pressure between here. So I kind of, and you'll see when I squeeze it, you'll see, sorry, the lighting's a little off, that it kind of stretches. So it extends right here. It extends at the wrist when I squeeze. You'll see my hand kind of squeeze out. And I'm going to come up my center line. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That's much easier. And 1, 2, 3. Good. Check that out. We're going to do the other side again. You're going to kind of squeeze with pressure here, and that kind of extends the hand out of the wrist to get a really clean stretch. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. Good. Okay. Now this next one, I'm actually going to take left hand over right along the side here, and I'm going to twist out. Okay, see if I can get a better angle for you to see. There we go. 1, 2, 3. So I'm twisting. It goes all the way up into here. 3. I just set my shoulder. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Ooh, good. Other side. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. You can see I'm twisting it right here. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and release. Good. Okay. Last one, number 4. I'm going to take the thumb behind the hand, fingers here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and release. We're gonna do the other side. Here we go. Thumb to the back, the front leg here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Good. And I like to, after I do these, I like to do my rotations 4 or 5 ways each. Okay. All right, so that is 4 stretches from the Eastern Sciences of Aikido to warm up and release and drain your wrists, your hands, your forearms, which are getting worked all the time and are always in need of some service. And even a base warm up is actually going to help you so much if you're doing sports or anything like that. And these are actually one of the, invaluable qualities when you do study martial arts that you learn is the warm ups and the conditioning for learning how to actually practice the systems is so magical in the long run for health and longevity, and also for the enhancement of your practice, whether it's in learning how to do a chain punch properly. The training and the preparation and the warm up is so key for having a really refined and masterful form. So that is the top of our second, or the end of our second hour, so to speak. This has been a Matrix Body Mechanics live broadcast. Never seems like we have enough time. Obviously, understandably, why I had a 3-hour show. But I am about to have a baby with my partner, my fourth, which is ironically, just so everyone feels the relevance of this, my baby is supposed to be born literally right around the time of this summer solstice, solar side of the alignment, December 21st, June 21st, like right around now. And I'm just paying attention to it all the dynamics around it, imagining for all the souls being born in this pivotal window in this time, the level of astrological knowledge and wisdom that's being imprinted into consciousness right now. It is extremely powerful. I'm honored and blessed to be alive through this. We all are, truly. If you could really understand the timeline of this event, of what's coming, that it's 6,000 years was the last time that this took place. And if you look back historically, archaeologically, 6,000 years ago, the transformation, the ends of civilizations, the earth changes, that it's all connected together. Because I believe these concentric spherical rings surrounded by electromagnetic fields still expand as this process happens, and the tectonic plate expansion to what we think of as a sphere. I couldn't even tell you what shape it really is, because I haven't been out to really look at it. I've only seen, this is where you can get really real, is just being okay with not fully 100% knowing, but knowing that the full 100% thing that you've been told is actually not it. And there is a pattern of that deception consistently across the board with so many factions of reality for us, because what a brilliant way to control a people, by controlling their reality. And so many arrays of the construct of it that you couldn't expose one and expose all of them, because it is a web, so to speak, a matrix of deception to see the matrix of consciousness and what it truly is. And a matrix is holographic. Okay. So with that being said, it's been an honor to journey with you this week. I'm going to put the links in the chat room below, and we'll put it as well in the information and captions for Matrix Body Mechanics TV. We're here every Monday, 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern. I'll be journeying again. In fact, actually, I believe that, let's see, we will be past it. So have a great 21st. Have a great solar event side of this alignment. Please find some time to meditate, be present, go on the earth, be connected to this earth, be aware of the skies, go look at the stars that night on the 21st. Just pay attention. Be present. Remember, the present is the gift. All right. You can check us out always at www.matrixbodymechanics.com. That's our website for neuromuscular release therapy, and a lot of information and videos to show self-healing. There's lots of little beautiful gems for how to do neuromuscular therapy self-treatment wise, and also Matrix Body Mechanics TV on YouTube. We got a lot of old videos that show you how to do neuromuscular therapy, how to activate your system, how to get these toxins, this memory, this history, these emotions, this past, the shadow, the darkness that's been conditioned in us through the suffering of this world and this realm we've been in, to come out of you. You can do it yourself. And we have a lot of videos showing this, even just little short ones to do so. But even these stretches on your arms, what we just did is causing my arms feel really loose and drained and fluid and open. These practices are going to be what helps you to be free and surrendered to the divine flow of whatever is to be. So I look forward to continuing that journey with you. Be good to each other and yourself, and we'll see you next week. Enjoy your summer solstice and this first portion of the alignment. And yeah, Satnam.